friends, it's Rana and today I'm gonna talk about my physical TBR. Last week I posted a video announcing that I'm going on a 1-year book buying ban that started on the 20th of October, and I mentioned in that video that I'm gonna start simultaneously my zero TBR challenge. In 2022 till 2023, I actually did these two challenges together and they went so well for me. But after that, I bought so many books and I haven't read many of what I bought. So I thought to myself, let's do this again. Let's do the zero TBR challenge and the 1-year book buying ban again to see some good results with all the books I own and I haven't read. Last time, if I remember, I had 45 plus, around that number, books on my physical TBR, and I narrowed them down to 6 or 7 books. This time, I believe I have more than 60 on my physical TBR, and I don't know if I'm gonna be as good as reading them this time around in 1 year, because I've been reading very slowly because of the reading slump that's been going on for a few months now. But maybe if I posted about me doing this challenge, that I'm gonna hold myself accountable to show you that I actually can do it again. The reason I always do the zero TBR challenge and the 1-year book buying ban together, because it is much easier to do that, to read the books you have when you are not buying any more books. My book buying ban started on the 20th of October and I subconsciously started my zero TBR challenge with it. So I will show you all the books I have now. I believe I finished one since the 20th of October and I DNF'd one, I believe. Let's see how many books I actually have now. And these two challenges will go on for a whole year till October of 2024. So let's start with the book that I didn't manage to read them in my last TBR reading challenge and they are still on my shelves. The same exact books I didn't read for my previous zero TBR challenge are still on my shelves. And the first one we have, and probably the oldest book I currently have on my shelves, is Classical Literature by Richard Jenkins. This book I bought in my second year in uni, and I wanted, not my second year, my last year in uni, and I wanted to read it to make a research topic on it. Then something happened and I dropped that topic and started something else for my research paper. Until now, I didn't read it. No, I believe this book is the oldest on my bookshelf, and it is Metamorphosis by Ovid. I think this one I had on my shelf for over 8-9 years and I haven't read, even though I really love classical literature. And like a couple of months ago, I started reading it. I actually started reading it and reached page 13 and stopped. I wasn't in the mood for it, but I was enjoying what I was reading and I like the style of the book and the way they wrote it. So why I haven't read it for all these years yet? No, but you know. The other two books I have from my previous challenge are the Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, the part 1 and the part 2. And yes, I haven't read them yet. I went into a phase after finishing the Oathbringer books, and I wasn't, because I didn't enjoy them, I became hesitant to pick the 4th book, even though my sister is currently about to finish the 2nd part of it. She's and she will finish it, and she is enjoying it too much. And she keeps nagging me to read it and says that I'm gonna enjoy it. And it's been a while since I finished Oathbringer and I have forgotten a lot of things happened in there. So I need to watch a summary review of Oathbringer to be able to go back to the series. Now that I think about it, I haven't been in the mood for fantasy for since the start of this year. Since the start of 2024, I haven't been reading any fantasy. The next book I have is Robin by Dave Itzkoff. I didn't read it yet. I still haven't read it because I told you why last time, because I feel like it's gonna be a heavy read, a sad read, and I already feel shitty and don't want to make myself feel worse by reading this book, but I have to eventually. And then we have Korea From Rags to Riches by the Korea Institute of Public Administration. I still haven't read it. It is a nonfiction book about the history of Korea from 1950 to 2010. Yes, still on my shelves. And the last book I had from my previous challenge is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. This book I started reading in November of 2023, and I stopped reading it for a while, then picked it up again, then stopped again, and now I'm attempting to finish it for the nonfiction November, and I'm doing pretty good. I'm enjoying it. So maybe if I pushed myself a little, I'm gonna finish it soon. So these were the books that you already know I have and I didn't read. Let's start with the new books I acquired since the last Zero TBR challenge or the last book buying ban. First, we will start with the fantasy pile. This is the fantasy pile now I have of the books I haven't read. The first book we have The Shadow of the Gods by Johnny Gwynne, a fantasy book. I believe it is an epic fantasy trilogy. The third and last book have dropped recently, has been released recently, and I hear many great things about it, and I know I'm gonna love it. It is, I believe, Norse inspired. I haven't read any Norse-inspired fantasy, but the cover, the synopsis, the vibes, all seems like a fantasy series that I'm gonna enjoy. Next, we have another Brandon Sanderson book, Dress of the Emerald Sea. I bought it even though I started being not that excited about Brandonson's books after Oathbringer, but also this book I heard many great things about it. It seems light and easy to read, and it is a standalone, so it makes it easier. But after I bought it, I found out that this may not be the best edition to read it in because other editions has so many photos and pictures in it. This one has none, but I love these covers, so maybe I can read it and look up all the photos and pictures on the internet. Next fantasy we have is The Guards by Terry Pratchett. This one is the first book in the Dragon series, I believe, from this author's huge fantasy world called Discworld, and I was planning to read it very soon after I bought it, but as I said, I haven't been in the mood for any fantasy recently, and I started actually reading the first few pages on my commute. I don't know if I'm not still familiar with his writing style, but I found it to be harder to get into. That's why I stopped reading it, because I think it is not the right book to read on the bus back home after a long day of work. It needs your attention at first. All fantasy books need your attention at first to get into the world, but I think especially this one because I'm not really familiar with his writing style. Next we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. You know me, I love the City of Brass series by S.A. Chakraborty, and this is her new fantasy series. It is following a Muslim older lady pirate and it sounds like something I'm gonna enjoy. So I believe from all the fantasy books, I think I'm gonna read this one first, and it has a stunning cover. Next we have a second-hand book that has been very popular on BookTube so many years ago, and it is The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. People were raving over this book like 8-10 years ago, and I didn't read it back then, but I'm still interested in it. I know people say the series go downhill after the second book, but I just want to see what is it about, especially the first book, and I will decide for myself. I think it is more of a sci-fi book about alien invasion. And the last fantasy trilogy I have here is the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I heard a lot of people loving this trilogy and this author, and I think this is the best start for me for his works. And this one, I believe it is a grim, dark fantasy series. I'm excited to read it. I'm looking forward to read it, but I'm not really willing to commit to it yet. The next pile we have here is nonfiction / memoirs / biographies. And the first book we have is Hidden Figures by Margaret Lee Shetterly. This book, it is on my TBR. I'm planning to read it for nonfiction November. This one is for young readers edition, so it is not the real full book. It talks about the story of these three African American ladies who were a big part of NASA going to space, but their story was kept secret, I believe. I'm planning to read this easier to read edition and watch the movie on Netflix. Then we have the Holy Quran, and you may ask yourself, Rana, you are Muslim. Have you never read the Quran before? And the answer is, of course I did. I read it every year, at least once in Ramadan. But this one is in English, and I would like to read an English translation of the Quran to see how it is interpreted in English, and would it feel different to read it in another language than the language that it was meant to be read in. Next, we have a book that, I believe 100% I'm gonna unhold, is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This book, I bought it because it has a beautiful cover, beautiful colors, and I found out later when I was reading the inside of the book that it is about lesbian love or something like that. I'm not interested in that, if you can't tell. So I'm gonna unhaul it. But I'm gonna show you to you right now because it is still currently on my physical TBR shelf. Next, we have The Girl from Aleppo by Nujeen Mustafa. It is the story of this disabled young lady called Nujeen and how she escaped from war or the current situation in Aleppo when it started to, I believe, Europe. Then we have Longitude, the true story of a lone genius who solved the greatest scientific problem of his time by Dava Sobel. I don't know anything about this book except what it says on the cover, so yes, I think I had it on my nonfiction November of last year TBR and I didn't read it, so yes. Then we have Hidden Valley Road by Robert Colker. From what I heard about this book, it is about this family, 10, I think, children who were diagnosed, most of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia, and this book talks about their story and the scientific opinions about them and studies that were conducted on them. The next book is Do No Harm by Henry March. This one is a medical nonfiction book. It talks about the stories of life, death, and brain surgery. Next, we have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom. I'm not really 100% sure what this book is about. All I know is I believe it is emotional, and the author has some political opinions that I don't agree on, but since I have this book, I will try to read it and spread the art from the artist, just in this case for this time. Next, we have Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I already read this book for Nonfiction November, and I'll talk about it on my Nonfiction November wrap-up, but why I'm showing you this, because when I started the Zero TBR challenge, it was unread yet on my shelves, but now I read it because I was too lazy to film this video on time. The other book, Into the Magic Shop by James R. Doty, I DNF'd. I read like 100 pages of for Nonfiction November and I DNF'd it. Next, we have Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari, the same author of Sapiens. This is his second most popular book. This one is a brief history of tomorrow. The other one was a brief history of humankind. This will be of tomorrow. The other book I have is The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston. This one is a memoir of the author. I don't know anything else about it except that I enjoyed this cover and I thought it was a fiction book at first. And the last non-fiction book I have here is Hillbilly Elegy by G.D. Venice. It is a memoir of a family and culture in crisis and talks about, someone said that it talks politically about the US. So, okay, let's see what it will actually be about. Now that we finished the fantasy and nonfiction pies, let's see the poetry, really small poetry pie. The first book we have is The Collected Poems by W.B. Yeats. Yes, I bought a whole collection of poems just because I read one poem I loved many years ago, and I want to read other works by him because that two lines of his poem really hit me hard. So yes, that's why I bought it. And I'm really in the mood to read some poetry soon, so I think I'm gonna pick it like next month or in January. The other poetry collection I have is the selected poems of Emily Dickinson. I studied some of her poems in university. They were all sad, melancholy, and about death, and I enjoyed them. The last book of poetry I have is The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam by Ernest E. Lowes. I heard about the Rubaiyat al-Khayyam so many times from the start of my life, and I saw this in a second-hand book sale, and I thought, why not? Let's read it in English. I'm pretty sure it's not gonna hit as hard as if I read it in Arabic, but let's give it a try. Now for my classics pile, we have The Art of War by Sun Tzu. All I know about it is a very, very old Chinese book about the art of war. And we have two Shakespearean plays, King Lear and A Midsummer Night's Dream. I only read Macbeth by him, and I want to read all of them in this edition, because it is a very, very good edition with explanations and pictures. And the last classic we have is The Metamorphoses by Franz Kafka, and other stories, of course. I believe this one is about a man turning into a cockroach. Now for the next pile, it consists of only two books, and it is mystery thriller. The first book we have is Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. It is the second book of the Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I read the first book years ago. I didn't enjoy it that much, and I thought I'm gonna give it another try. Then I watched the Netflix series, and it refreshed all my memory of it. So there's no need to reread it, but I'm gonna continue the series with Good Girl, Bad Blood. The other book is The Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. It is an Agatha Christie book. I don't need to say anything else more about it. The next pile is literary historical fiction pile. The first book I have is absolutely the least popular book I have in all of my shelves, and it is The Last Migration by Jad El-Hadji. I don't know anything about this book. It just caught my eye in a second-hand, book sale, and I bought it. I only saw like one person that rated this book 2 stars on Goodreads, so it doesn't sound so hopeful. Next, we have The Blue Between Sky and Water by Suzanne Abdelhawa. I previously read another book by her called Mornings in Jenin, and this one also a historical fiction book set in Palestine. I don't know many things about it, but I loved her first book, so I bought this one too, because I was actually more interested in this book than the other one. Next we have The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. This one is another historical fiction book. I believe it is set in India, a multi-generational historical fiction. Then we have Atonement by Ian McQueen. I don't know anything about this book except it is like a romance historical. It has a movie adaptation that everyone loves, so yeah, I will read it, I will watch it and see for myself what is it about. Next is another historical fiction book set in India, and it is A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery. It is a big book, but a lot of people love it, and when I bought it, it had a gift card inside. I don't know why people unhold books that were gifts, but at least keep the card. Then we have the book that was voted the best book of the 20th century, and it is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferranti. It is a historical fiction book set in Italy by an Italian author, talking about the friendship between two girls starting from their childhood to their old age, I believe, and it is a series, but this one is the first book. Next we have The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out of the Window and Disappeared by Jonas Johansson. This book always caught my eye. The title, the cover, the premise of the book. Hopefully it's gonna be a good one. The last book we have on this pile of historical literary books is A Terrible Kindness by Jo Browning Grow, a book that I bought solely because I love the cover and the backside of it. The sad thing, I dropped the first moment I got it into the house and destroyed it. So sad, so sad. That was all for my English books. Now for my Arabic books. Let's start with the longest series I have here, and it is, oh my god, it is a history series of 7 books called Al-Bidaya wal-Nihaya by Ibn Kathir. Talks about, oh my god, it talks about the history of the world, starting from the start of the creation till the end of time. I'm gonna make it like a challenge for myself to read all the series in 2025. Oh my god, we are in 2025. And I think I'm gonna read like one book every a month and a half to be able to finish the 7 books during the whole year. Now for the remaining Arabic books we have here, most of them are Islamic books, history books, and a few novels here and there. The first book we have is a novel called Druze Belgrad حكاية حنا يعقوب by Rabi' Jaber. I will try not to translate any of these titles, or I'm gonna put them down here, but I'm not gonna translate them right now and here. It is a Lebanese book that won the Arabic Booker Prize for novel in 2012. I believe it talks about someone who got mistaken for another religion or another race or something like that and was stolen from his village. I'm not pretty sure, but I'm gonna read it this month for another challenge that I'm doing. Then we have كائن لا تحتمل خفته by Milan Kundera. This book is in English called The Unbearable Lightness of a Being. I know nothing about it except that it is very popular and considered classic by many. Then we have At-Tanturiyya by Radwa Ashur. It is a novel talking about the massacre that happened in a small Palestinian village called At-Tanturiyya. I'm not pretty sure what year it happened, but it is an old event and it was pretty sad. It is a longer novel, but hopefully it's gonna be a good one. The other novel we have here is Samarkand by Amin Malouf, another Lebanese author. I read other book by him. It was alright, but this one is heavily praised by his fans as his best work. Then we have a trilogy here, a very recent acquisition. It is called Asfar Madinat al-Tin by Saoud As-Sanusi, the same author of The Bamboo Stalk. And this one, the first book we have Sifr al-Aba'a, then the second book Sifr al-Tabbi, and the last one is Sifr al-Anfuz. I didn't read any of them yet. I signed all the books by the author recently in Amman International Book Fair, and I can't wait to start reading them. Another novel, Palestinian novel, we have Zaman al-Khiyul al-Bayda by Ibrahim Nasrallah. I never heard someone talking about this book without saying how shocked, disturbed, and sad they were by reading it. And I love me a sad historical fiction book. Then we have 2 books by the same author, Firas As-Sawah, Ar-Rahman wal-Shaytan and Al-Qasas al-Qur'ani wa Mutazawiyatuh al-Tawratiyya. This author is a Syrian author. I believe, read 3 books of him. He always writes about mythology, religion, especially in the Mesopotamian and the Levantine area. These books, however, they focus more, this one, Rahman al-Shaitan, focus more about the merciful and the evil nature, the duality nature in religions. This one, it talks about the stories, the Quranic stories that has similar one or parallel one in the Old Testament and the Bible. Next we have Al-Rahiq al-Makhtoum by Safi al-Rahman Mapar Kafuri. I know this book looks similar because I had it, I believe, in my last challenge. I forgot to mention it in the first start of this video. I started reading it. I read a good chunk of it, I think maybe 100 pages. Then I put it down to finish another book and didn't pick it up yet. It is a biography of our Prophet Muhammad. It is a great book, but I need to finish it because it is a really, really good book. I don't know why I stopped. Then we have 2 other books that I bought from Amma International Book Fair. The first one is تثبيت حجية السنة ونقد أصول من كوريين by Ahmed bin Yusuf Sayyid. I talked about it in my book haul, the last book haul. It talks about al-hadith and things about it. I don't know what it is exactly about or how to explain it in English. The other book is called شموع النهار إطلال على الجدل الديني الإلحادي المعاصر في مسألة الوجود الإلهي by Abdullah bin Salih al-Jaili. This book, in short, it talks about the religious conflict, about the modern atheism, and the whole issue of the existence of a God. Last but definitely not least, the last books I acquired before I started my 1-year book buying ban, it is Shubek Lubek by Dina Muhammad Yahya. These are graphic novels by Egyptian author and storyteller Dina Muhammad Yahya. I read this as an ebook in English, and when I found out that she actually wrote it originally in Arabic, I just wanted to read it in its original language. So I bought it. I loved it. I loved it a lot when I read it in English. So I can't wait to reread it in Arabic. You may say that I already read this book in English, so why I'm counting it as TBR? Because I didn't read it in this language, in this edition, that's why. Yeah, I know that I have other books I bought after I read them as an ebook or an audiobook, but I'm not gonna show you them because I already read them, but this one is a different story because it is in another language. Now let me count how many books I have. So I just finished counting all the books I have unread on my shelves, and they are 68. I thought 45 was a lot when I started my previous Zero TBR challenge, but now I have 68 books to read. 7 of them or 8 of them I already had from last time. So in short, I bought 60 books since the last time I finished my book buying ban, and I haven't read them. Will I be able to read 68 books in 1 year? In just 1 year, will I be able to read all of these books? I hopefully will do that, but I'm scared because 2024 was one of my toughest reading years. Yes, I read so many great books, so many 5 stars, but the total number of books I read, I don't think it even reached 55 till now. Statistically, I'm becoming more and more of a slow reader. So will 68 book be achievable for me, especially when many of these books are huge tomes, very big books. So will it be possible to do that? I doubt it, but I'm not gonna lose hope with myself. I will try as best as I can to beat my reading slump and to start reading more this upcoming year, starting from now. I will try to squeeze the shorter books between the big tomes every now and then to make it easier for me to finish this challenge. If I pushed myself a little, hopefully I won't burn out and be able to read all of these. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to see my future videos, and I will see you next time. Bye!